Welcome to this event, to this community live from the Cisco community. So today we're going to talk about collaboration with one of our Cisco VIP ladies she has been actually a VIP for 3 years or more, and she will be talking about something for Cisco Expressway. So before we get started, I would like to share with you a couple of things related to this session and other content that might be useful for you. So first of all, I would like to invite all of you to get to know more about her. So we have actually an interview with Maren Mahoney, and I got this honor to talk to her, and there's so much to learn about her story, her career, and she even provides advice to everyone who's looking to do things like her. So you will be able to see the link in the chat for this and everything else that we comment during this session, so you can access to it. Also, I would like to invite all of you to become actually an event top contributor or a high contributor in the community. Why? We have different awards and things that we provide to our participants and members. Once they share knowledge with others, they are active, they publish content, or they help others to answer questions. So we invite you to become one. Besides the award, this also provides you a good reference in the community. And sometimes people ask me, okay, Hilda, that's really cool. How you guys do this? Well, it's in two ways, but most likely it's about rating content at the Cisco community. This not only helps us to identify people who has been participating a lot in the community or giving good things, but it also helps us out to identify and recognize quality content in the community and say thank you to other people. So next time someone goes in and, for instance, is looking for the answer to a question and they get an answer, and when you give a helpful vote, we know that that answer is valuable and is useful. And also, if you provide an accepted solution when it's in a forum, in a discussion, well, we know that is the answer for that question, which makes things easier in future. And well, as I was mentioning before, we have our Cisco community expert today, actually a Cisco designated VIP, and she's Maren Mahoney. There are so many things about her. I would really invite you to have a look to the interview. Otherwise, I would take like around 3 to 5 minutes just to introduce all she's doing. But I would like to invite you, Maren, to introduce yourself, please, to the whole audience.
So, hi, I'm Maren. I'm a senior technical instructor at Sunset Learning Institute. So I teach for a living, which I think is like the most important job I've ever had. Been doing networking in one variety or another for 30 years. I'm older than I look. And my goal for you guys for today is to get your feet under you so that you feel ready to do all of this. Anyway, so I've been doing Cisco for 20 plus years, specifically the collaboration stuff. I've got a CCIE in Collab and some other CCNPs, and I teach a variety of things. And I am glad to be here today. You put me on the spot, Hilda. I was not expecting that.
I'm so sorry, but I think it's better to hear it from you than from me. The only thing that I can tell people extra from that is that around just only a couple of years, Maren has been helping out more than 4,000 people in the community. That gives you just an idea of what she has done in the community. But well, so for all of you who would like to have a deeper look to the presentation and the slides, they will be available in the community. If you cannot find it out, just please allow us a couple of minutes so they will be there. And lastly, remember that to submit all your questions in the Q&A panel allocated in the right side, usually at the bottom of your WebEx screen if you are in a desktop, and if you're in a mobile device, just in the middle in the tiny spheres. That will help us out to answer the questions, and we will most likely save most of them till the end of the presentation, so don't get desperate, okay? So stop about talking and please, can you please guide us to everything? Let me share with you the presenter's privilege.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you for your patience, everybody, with the Q&A. Today, the person I had recruited to help out with the Q&A ended up with a different emergency. So I will get to all of the questions that are in the Q&A, and they will be posted along with the presentation and all that after. Oh, I thought I got down to here. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, and here we go. So welcome to regex expressions in Cisco Expressway. We're going to start by looking at what regex expressions are, just sort of in general. We'll look at basic expressions, like what are the individual components that we use to put all of the expressions together. And then ways we can enhance that with additional expressions, repetition expressions. And then everybody's favorite, look aheads and look behinds. I'm going to explain what those are. We will look through some examples, and then we'll also look through some practical examples of look aheads and look behinds that you will actually see in an expressway and what they mean. Because just for fun, oftentimes the way these look aheads and look behinds actually end up in an expressway have a little bit different syntax than sort of generic ones. So I'll get there. And finally, at the end, what we will be talking about thus far is how do I go about capturing different parts of a string? And then importantly, especially with Expressway, if I'm doing transforms or like search rule replaces and all that, it's like, how do I actually modify? Like, what do I do to modify these things? So this is where we're headed here. So this brings us to polling question number 1. What is your level of experience with reading and writing regex expressions? And the first thing is, hey, like, what do you mean by what is a regex expression? You can parse a few things, but you don't really get it. You can read and write them, but or you're just hoping to pick up a few pointers. This is where we're headed there.
But don't worry if you didn't get the chance. We will have 2 more polling questions. All right. You should be able to look at the results, and so as the audience.
Alrighty, so reading and writing simple ones or reading most expressions seems to be the primary, which I would totally expect. That's hopefully why you're here. So, all right, let us continue then. Okay. So regex, regular expression, it's really a programming language. If you start talking to people who are doing database programming, querying, and all that, these regex expressions are part of that. You can match things, you can transform things with these regex expressions. Now, just for fun, regex in Cisco Expressway was developed by the former Tandberg people, and they approached regex expressions from the perspective of the Tandberg, then VCS, now Expressways. So really focused on voice itself. And just for fun, because iOS and iOS XE really preceded that by a number of years, the way routers, if you're doing voice translation profiles or SIP profiles, the way those routers handle these same regex expressions, the actual characters and all that, it's a little bit different. And that's because the routers really, which host these things, have to do more than just voice. And so be aware of that. The syntax you're going to learn for Expressway is a little bit different than what you're going to find in iOS. And I'll explain a couple of the things I happen to know about, but if you run into something weird, that's probably why. So to start with, a dot, any single character, alpha, numeric, or special character. And that means really any character. Now think about, and we'll look at how to fix this later. Think about a URI, bob@bob.com. The bob.com, that dot, is, guess what, actually a variable. We will look at how to make that an explicit dot as opposed to a variable. But anytime you see a dot in there, that's really can be any character. /D, we'll get to the slash part here in just a second, but when you see a /D in a string, we're talking about a digit, explicitly a digit. Now, regex expressions themselves actually make a difference between uppercase and lowercase. So /D is a digit, and depending on which platform you're working with, /D is anything except for a digit. So do be aware of this. When you're typing these things in, case sometimes matters, it doesn't hurt. You know, it's the same thing in Unified Communications Manager. Most of the time, a lowercase x is fine when you're doing strings, but you really want to do uppercase x's because sometimes it actually matters, right? Okay. Then anytime you see a brackets, and again, this is the same rule that you have in iOS or iOS XE. This is the same rule that you have in Cisco Unified Communications Manager, which is a brackets is one digit, one of the ones inside the list. Now this is an explicit list, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, but you can also do ranges. Now note that I've got, 0 through 9, that's one range. That would be kind of the same as this. I have also this range for AZ. Could I do something like that? Sure. And that would be a little more specific than the dot. The dot really is any character that includes the special characters, but this would be literally just 0 through 9 and A through Z. So the takeaway there is when you are defining a digit, and anytime, or a character, anytime you have a bracket, that's right, that's one character, you can be as explicit as you want to with regards to what that character ought to be. Inside of brackets, and it's different outside of brackets, but inside of brackets, we're talking about not. So this would be not A, not B, or not C. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Parentheses. This is a grouping. And the parentheses are used in multiple different ways with regards to how I group things. Sometimes it's a match string. Sometimes I'm just trying to define different parts of a longer string. But anytime you see a parentheses, do two things. First of all, look for the open and the closed parentheses. And then look to see if there's more than one parenthesis. Because if you have more than one group, a pair of parentheses, open and closed, then you can do a callback to those by defining which group you want. And we will see a specific example of that as we go through here. And then finally, the slash. Let's talk about the slash here. What is that about? All of this comes, regex expressions come, at least partially, from HTML web coding. Now, think about a web page. If I'm going to put text up on a screen, right? Normally what programmers will do, they'll program their page, and then any text that is supposed to show up on the screen, they will put in quotation marks, and that will just show it up. But in strings, in match strings, in arguments, I'm also going to sometimes have those same letters, like A and B and C and D. So in a context where something could either be a variable or be an explicit thing, how do I know which one it is? And an example would be, what if I had, dog.com? In this case, the dog, the D in the dog needs to be an actual letter D. But if I have a slash D, then I'm talking about a digit. How do I know the difference? Because of the slash. By default, a D is a letter. If I want to change that letter into the other thing, which is I want to take a specific character and turn it into a variable, I put a slash in front of it. So this is what the slash is for. And what I'm really talking about is taking the default behavior and changing it into its other behavior. Because here's our dot, right? Dog.com. I said dot was a variable, and in this string, as is, dot is a variable. So how do I make that specifically a dot and make it not a variable? Well, you put the slash, and the way I would write that then would be dog/dot.com. What I'm saying is, hey, this character that follows has the opposite behavior of its default behavior. For those of you familiar with Unified Communications Manager, this is why, for instance, if I put a plus into a directory number field, right, and I'm going to lead it with a plus, I have to put that backslash in front of it. That's because a directory number field is a programming, an argument field. It's something that is used as part of call processing. And a plus, guess what, is actually a variable, as we will see in a moment. So as soon as I put a plus into a route pattern or a translation pattern or directory number field, which are argument fields, processing fields, I got to put the slash in front of the plus. But if you put it into something like an external phone number mask, which is just a text field, I can put that plus in without putting in a backslash, because the external phone number mask field is not a call processing field, it's just a text field. And therefore the plus is the plus, it's just whatever you put in. So this is why that plus. So what you need to do is, for whatever system you're working in, whether that's a router, a cube, whether that's Expressway, or whether that's call manager. Know what the default behavior is for characters like D and dot and plus. And then if you need to alter the meaning, that's what the slash is for. So if you've ever wondered about that, it's like, why do sometimes I need it and sometimes I don't? This is why. Okay. So let's take a look at some examples, right? So 4 dots, that's a 4-character string, alphanumeric plus special characters, any 4 characters. 7/D/D/D. Remembering that a D is 1 digit, this then would be a 4-digit number starting with a 7. There's another way to write that we will see here in a little bit. Anything on a telephone keypad. I don't want you to send me a plus. I don't want you to send me, a dot, whatever. I want you to send me exactly what's on a telephone keypad. You might be able to repeat this 10 times. Send me a 10-digit number. Remember the parentheses. The parentheses allows me to capture a string. And if I want to then refer to the string, count the number of pairs of parentheses you have. If I want to recall what's inside this set of parentheses, I would recall with the number of the parenthesis, which, if I've got 3 sets of parentheses, that would be group number 1, that would be group number 2, and that would be group number 3. And here's an example again of where that slash is, because if I just put a 1, if the replace string was just 1, then guess what I'm getting? Instead of bob.com, I'm getting 1. Instead, by putting the slash 1, I'm saying, oh, hey, this 1 has special meaning, specifically to go do a callback and go get the stuff inside the first set of parentheses. And here's a more a longer example of that. Here I've got sales at billy.bob.com. Okay. And maybe if somebody happens to send me the subdomain, I want to get rid of it. Okay. Sales at bob.com. My replace string then would be /1/3. Go get group number 1, go get group number 3. And there's that example there. And again, with the slashes. This syntax right here is the same in iOS and iOS XE with regards to things like voice translation profiles and SIP profiles. Oh, and there we are. We're up to polling question number 2, although it looks like you guys may have already done polling 2. What is y'all's question, Hilda? Oh, there we go. Okay.
No, it's
coming. More specific. Okay, I gotcha. All right, so have you worked with regex expressions? If so, where? I'm kind of curious to know where everybody is. And again, all that apply. I'm going to answer too because I can.
No, and you shouldn't.
Oh, I shouldn't?
No, no, you can't. No, that's okay. No, you're teaching us right now. You're sharing your knowledge with us.
Well, so, I know, but still.
The only thing I would like to tell the audience is that the slides are going to be ready after the event because we're still having a quick look to all the information is correct, right?
It's my fault. I ended up doing some last-minute edits of the way I was wording, especially the positive and negative look-aheads and look-behinds. The wording on that is really particular, and I edited it at the last minute. That's my fault. So we will post this with the video for sure.
No one's fault. No one's fault. So just wanted to let the audience know that they don't get desperate. Like just the slides are going to be there in a moment and just after the event. And remember that the video, the slides, and everything will be connected. Even the session, we have a session to ask questions after the event. Everything is going to be just in the event page where you register for this. So let's have a look to the answers.
A little bit of everything. Okay. Awesome. 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 Okay. I'm looking at the answers and it's pretty even. No Cisco Cloud Clock, interestingly, but most of everything else. Well, awesome. All right. Good. Okay. So once we have the individual characters, how do I go about not having to do /d/d/d/d/d/d, right? Well, a star. 0 or more repetitions of the previous expression. And so what you'll sometimes see is dot star. Now remember, dot can be any character, and the star is 0 or more repetitions. So literally anything, including blank, would match. You have to be careful about using something like this unless you have additional pieces in your argument, because literally that matches absolutely everything. Just this, there's wide open. Better would be something like dot and then plus. 1 or more repetitions of the previous character, which means something must exist. It only has to be 1 character long. It can be more long than that, but it has to be at least 1 character. Blank is not sufficient. Question mark, 0 or 1 repetitions. And where you'll usually see this is if I want to either yes or no have a particular thing. For instance, if I would like to allow both 10 and 11-digit dialing, I can put a 10-digit dial string in and then precede that with 1 and then question mark, right? So 0 or 1 repetitions of this. The 1 can exist or the 1 cannot exist. And so well, I'll show you the other part of that in a second, but the 1 can exist or not exist. Add 10 digits after that, and you have a 10 or 11-digit number. And I'm thinking mostly of North American numbering plan because that's where I am, but you get the basic idea. Maybe if you wanted to match an access code and either have it or not have it, but both would match, that would be another example. N repetitions of the previous character or expression. And this is where we can simplify. If I want to say 4 digits or 10 digits, this allows me in the curly Q brackets to define how many of the previous. So this is, any number. This is at least 1. This is exactly how many do I want. And you can modify that with a comma. And the comma in this case is in between, 4 and 5 or 4 and 10 or whatever it is you want to do. But that would be a first and a last length for your expression. I'm going to see some examples here in just a second. So dot string again. That's actually not even true. I got to go edit that. A string of at least 0 characters. I'm going to have to edit. See, there we go. This is why I'm editing these things. 0 characters, really any length, but anything. Here's one that's interesting. Notice my \plus. Remember that plus is a variable. So if I want to start a string with a plus, I would have to put the \/ in front of it. And then, remember, this is at least 1 repetition of the previous character. Can be more, but I have to have at least 1 of the previous things. So that means it must start with a plus. And then dot star. Anything after that. So that would be any string as long as it starts with a plus. Before we did the 7/d/d/d to say a 4-digit number starting with 7, this would be a simpler way. Or that example of, well, actually we'll see that in a second. If I wanted a 10-digit number, I could say /d and then in curly Q brackets 10, and now I've got a 10-digit number exactly. Here we go, /d, a 4 or 5 or 6-digit character at a specific IP address. The curly Q brackets again with a range of the preceding expression. So I've got a digit, how many? 4 or 5 or 6. And here's my example from before. The 1 question mark. This expression must exist or may exist It can be 0 or 1 times. So it may exist or may not exist, but one or the other. And then followed by 10 digits. So again, for North American numbering plan, that would be a 10-digit number with or without the 1. Here, if I have a 10-digit number with a 7-digit area code or region code, right? I can include that or not include that, and then exactly how many digits after. In your production environment, depending on what your dial plan is, hopefully your dial plan is a consistent length. For North American numbering plan, 7 digits, 10 digits. In many other countries inside the country, variable length dialing. So this is where things like the curly Q brackets can be handy. If your station codes inside your region codes, if your station codes are, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 digits, cool. Then you could do something like /D and then in curly Qs 4,7. And then maybe preceded by some kind of a specific region code. I'm thinking about Germany in particular, where inside the German national numbering plan, the region codes, area codes are 1 or 2 or 3 digits, or 4, I think also is possible. And then the station codes are different lengths. But overall, it does become consistent because the PSTN has to be consistent. You would just have to think about what you have in your dial plan and how best to define that. Okay, here's an either or. Now I've got the parentheses, again, that's a grouping. And in this particular case, rather than matching a specific thing, I'm matching an either or an or. This is especially handy if you have a domain where you've got multiple TLDs. You've got, in this case, .com or .net, or both belong to your company, or .net and .org, or .com and .de, whatever. Being able to match both of them with a single string rather than having to have 2 separate strings. Start of expression, unless you're inside of brackets. And again, this is one of those things where the syntax is different depending on whether you're in Expressway or whether you're in like iOS or iOS XE. So if that applies to you, if you are working with both Expressway and like a Cisco Cube, make sure you understand the effect of that in the particular the particular thing you're working with. I'm losing my words there. End of expression. Now, in a dial string, like in a voice translation rule in a Cisco router or a cube, end of expression. So it, I need to make sure that it ends at this thing and there's no additional digits. It's not in the middle of a string somewhere. We will also see this in a way to modify the way that our look-aheads and look-behinds work as well. So understand that what that $ means is end of expression. It's an anchoring point at the end of some kind of a string. And that's what the $ is for. Again, we will see this again. /S, single white space character. We don't generally see that in a like an expressway, but it is there. You may have spaces inside of certain strings, especially if you're trying to match specifically something like, and let me type this. You're trying to match something like invite and then a space and then SIP colon, right? That space, if you need to include this as part of your string, you may need that /S in there in order to make sure that you're capturing exactly a space and that you have a contiguous string, argument that you're trying to capture there. Common in expressways. In the expressway, you go to configure domains and you can have the list of domains that are local domains to your expressway. If you'd like to have a single argument that matches all of the locally configured domains in your expressway, you can do that with this string, %, local domain, %. You can do the same thing with IP addresses. Any IP address that is IPv4 in this case that is configured on an interface. If you've got dual NICs and that whatnot, then it would match all of those. So these are ways that you can capture, again, multiple different kinds of strings with a single argument. These are handy. And some examples. Let's parse this. Now, to be clear, this is not an argument you would want to put in your Expressway. I use this because I like the way that it includes a lot of the different kinds of expressions that we're looking at. What do we see? Well, I see an at here. Now, we've not talked about at as an argument, and it's not. That's an actual at sign. And G, I have here a slash dot, so specifically a dot. I have something at something dot TLD. That sounds like an email address, doesn't it? And that's exactly what this kind of expression is designed to capture. So here's my plus. One or more of the previous expression. I have the brackets, and I'm defining allowable characters in an email address. If you have, Bob-Sue at, or if you have, Bob, 1975 or something like that. So the ability for me to have a dot as part of my username, as the username part of my email address, an underscore, a dash, defines my specific characters I can use in the user portion of an email address. And I have to have at least one of them. And then I have the at. And then I have the same kind of string. Here's that plus sign saying I have to have at least one of these. So the domain portion, the actual domain, not this part, but the domain part has to have at least one character. Dot, because I have the slash dot, meaning specifically a dot. Com, net, edu, org. Now that's those for the original TLDs, from the old internet. You may find that you need to add additional ones, but this is a way to express an email address. What are acceptable characters for an email address? We don't do this in Expressway. It's a little limiting, but there are better ways to do sort of like, other stuff besides a specific email address. So just as an example, it could be a URI also, but don't do that. Here's a different example. Here I'm going to be doing has to start with a 703 and then additional 7 digits of any kind. So a 10-digit number starting with 703. Okay, and there's my $sign at the end, remembering anchoring the endpoint. What I want you to take away from this page here is being able to dig into a string you're looking at. Find your anchor points. In the case of the email address, our anchor points are the @ sign and this dot, and then think about what's in each of these sections. Same thing here. I'm starting with something specific, I'm ending with something specific, and what specific thing do I have? This would be no longer, no shorter, but exactly what. Find your anchor points, work out from there. Okay, everybody's favorite. Look aheads and look behinds. These are commonly used in expressways, especially when we're trying to include or exclude domains. And the logic behind them is specific, but you need to understand that logic in order to understand the expression. And for fun, remember that $sign that I was mentioning can alter the way that we anchor things? Well, guess what? It influences the way these are read also. So negative, look ahead. Look ahead says I'm going to have some kind of a parentheses, and I also want to look at what's ahead of that. A negative look ahead means don't find it. A positive look ahead would be do find it. So I either have to have both, or if both exist, that's a problem. For look behinds, then I'm talking about look after, look behind whatever's in my parentheses. And again, a positive means I have two things, they both have to be there. A negative is if both things are there, then that's a problem. So if that doesn't make any sense, I've got different ways to word it. This is part of what I was working on from a wording standpoint ahead of things. So positive look ahead. When you start seeing these expressions, first thing to do, again, look for your parentheses. This is the argument you're trying to anchor your expression on. Do I find this thing that's inside my parentheses? If so, for a positive look ahead, and the positive look ahead is the question mark equals, the look ahead says look in front to see if this exists. These two expressions together now, because it's positive, must both exist in order for this to be a match, for it to be a go ahead or a through or include. So foo, question mark equals bar. There's my positive look ahead. So look in front of bar for this. If it both is there, then it matches. Now, why not just put then in parentheses foo bar or something like that? Because remember that we're going to try and capture part of this. I'm not trying to capture foo. I'm trying to capture bar, but I'm only trying to capture bar if foo also exists. So the parentheses, again, are defining what I'm trying to capture. Negative look ahead. Question mark, exclamation point. Equals is positive, exclamation point's negative. Negative look ahead. Go find what's inside your parentheses. And again, look ahead. And because it's a negative look ahead, if X exists and it is followed by Y, now we're trying to exclude this. So in this case, foo bar, right? Excludes bar if preceded by foo. Another way to read that would be all foos are permitted as long as bar doesn't follow, is another way to sort of look at that. And it will depend on, again, what are you trying to capture specifically? Because depending on how you set up things like replace strings or prefixing or suffixing, where you put your parentheses will determine what is captured and then argumented on, and other things will be discarded. So this is why we have these different kinds of strings. Look behinds. Find whatever's inside your parentheses, and then because we're looking behind, we're looking after. So in this case, question mark, less, I don't know if that's a greater than or less than sign, sorry. And then the equals. So the equals is positive, and then look behind. Look for Y, and then look to see if X follows. If X follows Y, then absolutely yes, that's a match. It's an include. So positive look behind for foo and then bar is include foo. Like capture foo, foo is good, we're grabbing foo, but only if bar follows. It's a positive, we're trying to find both things together, but we only really care about foo. We don't really care about bar, we care about foo, but only if it's followed by bar. Negative look behind, same logic, but now if both exist, it's a exclude. So foo and bar. Look for foo. If you find foo, look for bar afterwards. And if you do, because this is a negative look behind, we are excluding foo now because it's followed by bar. This is how to read these. I don't myself see the Q&A. Let me bring up the Q&A. Is there anything interesting in the Q&A that I should look at here?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment? Okay. Well, hopefully that means I'm like being gloriously clear about all of this stuff. If not, definitely put stuff in the Q&A and we will get back to it a little bit later. Okay, so this is the basic logic of look aheads and look behinds. In expressways, though, we do something a little bit different commonly. It's not that you can't do those standard look aheads and look behinds, but a common way to use negative look aheads and negative look behinds in expressways is by adding an anchor. That $ again, ends with. It's considered a stipulation. And what we're saying is we're doing the action. In this case, this is a negative look ahead, right? The action and ending with this thing. So let's take a look. I have my parentheses here. Here's my open parentheses and my closed parentheses. And here is my negative look ahead. Now, normally with a negative look ahead, we're looking for something in front of the expression. But we have it inside the expression. Notice the dot star here. The dot star is our look ahead part. But what we're saying is, I don't really care. Whatever that is, that's fine. If it ends with sli-uclabs.com, then it is a match for this. I put dot star after that because, again, think about something like a SIP URI. A SIP URI is going to have like invite SIP : and then I'm going to have, user at host.tld : and a port number. And then I might have a tag and some stuff. Oops. Tag equals, and then some stuff, right? And what I care about, what I really care about is this part right here, right? And I'm going to have other stuff that follows. And I don't necessarily want to get rid of it, or maybe I do. But from a match standpoint, anything that follows is irrelevant as long as it matches up through here. It is a match for this string. And as a negative look ahead, negative, meaning if it matches this string, don't include it. So this string right here would say anything that does not have SLI-UC-Labs. SLI-UC-Labs is excluded with this. Another way to write the same expression, and this gets back to, we use more than one way to write some of these. Instead of a negative look ahead, I could do this also as a negative look behind. And remember, a negative look behind is find your parentheses and then look after. It doesn't matter what's after. Anything that is before, like my invite SIP : keep that. Here is the string. This also excludes sli-uclabs.com. It's going to depend on whether you're expecting this to, as a in a SIP URI, whether I need to capture everything that's after it, whether I need to capture everything that's before it, and so which one you're going to use in your production environment. What I want you to take away from this, again, is note where your parentheses are. Figure out what kind of expression are you doing. Negative or positive, look ahead or look behind. Look for any other characters inside, like your dot star or like the $, because that's going to change the argument a little bit. These, I don't think I have this. I'm going to double check and make sure I have that one right. Seems like I should have a thing after, but in both cases, we're trying to find a specific domain. This is a really common example, what I'm showing you too. So this one, if you do some Googling, you'll be able to find this. Here's another one. Again, negative look ahead. Don't care what is in front of any of my local domains. As long as it ends with that, I am good to go. And the dot star inside of here, I might also have : and a specific port number, or I might have, what do I want to say? Oh, this would also match not just invites, but also return strings. This says If it's a local domain, exclude it. So think about business-to-business styling. If I've got calls flowing through an expressway, I would want non-local domains, not the domains I'm processing, but all other domains to go ahead and go. How do I define non-local domains? Here we go. So all of those are matches. All of those so far are match strings. What do we do now? How do I go about using this in a transform or using this in a search rule if I'm going to be replacing or suffixing or prefixing? Here are some examples. /d star. If it starts with a digit, great. And I might even have, /d curly Q brackets 4. So any 4-digit number or something like that. Because I have parentheses, I can refer to it in a replace string. This allows me to go get what's ever in that first set of parentheses, and in this case, add a domain. So this adds a domain to a number. Remember, my plus is at least one character preceding. So anything at something, as long as it's at least one thing. And what am I doing? What I really care about is what's in the parentheses. So I might have something like this, and my replace string would be the parenthesis 1, which is, hey, go get the number part, go get the host portion, and remove the domain. Might be a number, might be a URI, and I'm just trying to keep the M Mahoney part, whatever. But this removes the domain. Add a domain, remove a domain. Here again, I've got my plus, so I have to have at least one character in front of this domain name, and I've got it specific to the domain /dot. Leave it alone. In this case, I'm trying to match a specific domain, but I don't want you to change anything. This is just a search rule. I don't want you to strip, prefix, suffix, regex, leave it alone. But this captures a specific domain where it has to have a full URI. Now we get a little more interesting. Again, .star. So something, hopefully, doesn't have to be, but something hopefully in front of my @ I probably would put .plus. And then I've got a parentheses. Notice my / and dot are inside the parentheses because I'm going to get rid of that. I want to take pod5.sli. The spacing got stranged when it got copied into Cisco's template, so forgive me there. I'll get that fixed before I publish this. But this says either pod5.sli.suclabs.com or just sli.suclabs.com. This pod5 is in parentheses with the question mark. 0 or 1 of the preceding character. So with or without may exist. Both things are captured. If you have a subdomain, remember the billy.bob example from earlier, same kind of thing. Now, with regards to where you put your parentheses, remember that in some cases, I may want to keep stuff in front of my parentheses, and sometimes I might want to keep stuff behind my parentheses. These two expressions are exactly the same, except for the fact that the closed parentheses is after the .star here and before the .star here. In this case, I'm doing something at pod5.sli.suclabs.com. Now I want to keep this and I want to keep this, but I also want to keep everything after the com. So I would want to keep the port number and the tag, for instance. By putting the .star inside the parentheses, I'm retaining that information when my replace string is the /3. Group 1, group 3, keep all the stuff. The second one says, hey, all I want I don't want the whole line. All I want is the URI. So something at pod5.sli.suclabs.com, and then because the .star is after, outside the .com. Remember, this is going to be group 1, and that's going to be group 3, right? /1/3 captures just the URI and gets rid of the port number and the tag and anything that follows. So be very careful about that. In the Expressway, there are regex expression testing. There's a testing tool in there, and there are other tools online. If you do look for an online tool, again, be aware that the syntax is a little bit different in different systems. I think that's about all I have to say about that. So, polling question 3. While you guys are answering polling question 3, I'm going to cruise the Q&A a little bit and see if there's anything in there I think is like super interesting. And I will, so he's asking, let me, oh, just been answered. I did answer that. I'm like, yeah, you actually can. So that, yeah, that got answered. I'll put a more specific answer in there, but yes. Good. You know, it's always good when I'm answering questions ahead of time. That makes me feel good. For what it's worth, after all of this, I still answer B. It's like sort of, I need to study this more. The more I read about it, especially the negative look ahead and look behinds and the way they're expressed in Expressway, every time I approach this topic, I think about I need more. So, and to that is all I have for today. It has been a pleasure. I look forward to posting the one correction I have along with the recording, the slide deck, and I don't see anything else that's in the Q&A that you guys have specific questions, but please do ask them. If you have a specific expression you're struggling with, please let me know. Other than that, it has been a pleasure, and I hope you all have a good day.
With that all said, and not looking at any other questions, thank you so much, Maren, for this. It is always a pleasure and an honor. I'm not an expert, particularly in collaboration, but you always make me understand many things. So no crazy words as you think.
I am glad to know that. That's good. Thank you. Cool.
Great. So once again, if you have any extra question, please don't forget to add it to the Ask Me Anything forum of this session. We're going to have it open till this Friday. Please don't forget. And if we find something here, we will place it ourselves there. And if you want to see any further information like these events, sessions, other interviews, don't forget to find this information. We have different social media channels. We have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and this is the Cisco Technical Support application. And also, if you speak another language rather than English, we invite you to actually visit them. We are available in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, French, and Korean. And we have events in those languages as well. And finally, if you're looking for further IT training, have a look to what the Cisco Learning Network has. They have a lot of content as well. So once again, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our VIP. And this is the first event that we have with a VIP webinar event this year. So, and it's about to finish, imagine.
Right on.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, and see you next time.